There is a moment when even resting feels unnecessary. Not because rest has failed, but because the one who needed rest has quietly faded. Earlier, effort gave way to ease. Then ease gave way to simplicity. Now even simplicity no longer needs to be named. What remains does not feel like a state you are in. It feels like the absence of needing to be anywhere at all. At this depth, the mind no longer asks how to live from truth. That question belonged to a time when life felt divided, when there was truth on one side and daily living on the other. That division has softened. Truth is no longer something you live from. It is simply what life is doing without reference. Notice how subtle this is. There is no shift you can point to. No clear before and after. No dramatic quieting of thought. Thought still appears. Activity still happens. The world still moves. But something essential has changed, not in experience, but in relationship to experience. Nothing is being carried anymore. Earlier, experiences accumulated. Each moment added to a sense of identity. Good moments lifted you. Difficult moments weighed on you. Now moments arise and complete themselves. They do not stack. They do not form a story. There is no psychological residue left behind. Each moment is whole in itself and leaves nothing to manage. This is why time begins to feel different. Clock time still functions, but psychological time loosens its grip. The past no longer presses forward demanding resolution. The future no longer pulls attention away seeking fulfillment. Planning may happen, but anxiety does not lean into it. Memory may appear, but it does not define you. Everything is lighter because nothing is owned. At this depth, even the sense of being present fades. Presence was once something you practiced, something you returned to. Now presence does not feel like a location. It feels like the absence of departure. There is no sense of having left and come back. Experience is simply where it is, without commentary. This is where the idea of living consciously dissolves. Consciousness is no longer contrasted with unconsciousness. There is no effort to stay aware. Awareness does not fluctuate with attention. It is not something you maintain. It is what remains when maintenance ends. In daily life, this expresses itself quietly. You respond to situations without internal debate. Words come out without rehearsal. Decisions are made without self-questioning. If something needs correction, it is corrected. If something needs care, care happens. But there is no inner voice evaluating how well you are doing at being awake. Mistakes no longer threaten identity. They are seen, addressed, and released. There is no self-judgment following them. Learning happens naturally, without shame or pride. Growth occurs without ambition. Movement continues, but without pressure. This is also where emotional life becomes uncomplicated. Emotions arise fully, without suppression, but they do not solidify into stories. Sadness appears and moves through without becoming my sadness. Anger may flare, but it does not demand justification. Joy arises, but it is not clung to. Everything flows because nothing is being claimed. Suffering ends here not because pain disappears, but because pain no longer finds an owner. Suffering requires a center. It requires someone who says, "This shouldn't be happening to me." When that sentence no longer appears, pain remains sensation, not suffering. Difficulty remains circumstance, not personal burden. At this depth, relationships also change. You no longer relate from a need to be understood, validated, or protected. Listening becomes natural. Boundaries arise without defense. Compassion flows without effort. You see others without needing them to be different for you to be at peace. Love is no longer something you give or receive. It is the absence of separation. The absence of distance between what appears as you and what appears as other. This does not make you passive. It makes you clear. Responses arise without entanglement. There is also no longer any fear of losing this. Loss implies possession. but nothing here is possessed. There is no state to protect, no realization to guard, no depth to maintain. What remains cannot be lost because it was never gained. This is why spiritual comparison falls away. There is no sense of being ahead or behind, no sense of depth versus shallowness, no interest in measuring progress. Progress belongs to time. Time has lost its authority. Teaching itself becomes light. Words are spoken without weight. There is no need to persuade or convince. If something lands, it lands. If it doesn't, nothing is at stake. Truth does not depend on transmission. At this stage, even silence is no longer privileged. Silence and sound are equal. Stillness and movement are equal. Meditation and activity are no longer opposites. Life moves freely between them without preference. This is where the question, what remains, also dissolves. The question assumes something could be removed and something left behind. But nothing has been removed. Nothing has been added. Only misidentification has ended. Even the sense of being a person located in a body softens. The body is experienced, but not as me. Sensations arise, but they do not define identity. The body is part of what appears, not the center of what appears. At this depth, humility is natural, not as an attitude, but as the absence of self-importance. There is no sense of being special, no sense of having arrived somewhere others have not. Those ideas feel irrelevant. This is also why fear of death loses its grip. Death appears as a thought, an image, a concept, and it is seen to have no owner. There is no instinctive recoil, not because of belief in continuation, but because there is no one positioned to end. Life becomes deeply intimate and completely impersonal at the same time. You feel everything more clearly, yet nothing is taken personally. There is sensitivity without vulnerability, strength without hardness. At this depth, the search has ended so quietly that you might not even notice it. There is no announcement, no conclusion, no final insight. One day you simply realize that you are no longer seeking, and that realization itself feels unimportant. What remains does not feel like fulfillment. Fulfillment implies a lack that has been filled. What remains feels like the absence of lack itself. Nothing is missing. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be understood. Life continues, breathing, seeing, moving, responding, without a center carrying it. There is no one behind life, no one ahead of it, and no one inside it. And in that, there is a quiet certainty that this has always been the case. No effort brought this about. No practice sustained it. No understanding produced it. It is simply what remains when everything unnecessary falls away. And there is nothing more to do.